Hello, everybody. Tonight I'm gonna go a bit off topic and talk about the reinstatement of the General Nundwe in Malawi as Army Commander. First of all, as a former MDF officer, I have a better understanding as to how um, the officers, current officers, will perceive this development. Um, the Malawi Defence Force, firstly, is not built on personalities. And just as much as I liked General Nundwe as a person, he was a really competent general and a decent human being. Um, but what people need to understand is that General Nundwe was already retired. Um, the retirement age in the Malawi Defence Force is 60, and every officer um, has to go at 60. And the institution uh, is hierarchical in nature, whereby all promotions, when officers join the corps or soldiers join uh, the MDF, they have aspirations to rise up the ranks. Let's say for the officers, they've got aspirations to go up to brigadier, lieutenant general, major general, and up to general. Um, but what has been happening in the past 20 years is that most of the officers, when they reach the higher ranks, um, they hang on to their positions, and they don't they don't they extend their service, and they get their retirement packages, and then proceed to hang on to their roles on contracts. Um, so this is a bit. That means if they don't go, then there won't be any movements at the bottom, because uh, all the colonels, the lieutenant colonels who have got aspirations to become brigadiers, they can move upwards in the institution because uh, there is no movement at the top. So this is upsetting for every officer. And what happened was that General Nundwe was also part of the system, and when he reached his retirement age of 60, he stayed on, just like other officers before him. Uh, they get these contracts that have remained unpopular amongst the soldiers, and he stayed on until he was removed by the former president. Um, uh, as much as I feel maybe he shouldn't have been removed at that time, at the same time, he had already reached his retirement age, and that it's the president's prerogative to have whoever general he wants to serve in the Malawi Defence Force. So, for the previous president, he made that decision to get rid of General Nundwe, the same way this current president has decided to remove General Namatanga and reinstate Nundwe. But now, what I'm finding problematic is not that he's been reinstated. What I have a problem with is the fact that he had already retired and shouldn't have been serving in the first place. And there are a lot of young officers who can do the same job competently, and they deserve these opportunities to rise up the ranks and become brigadiers, major generals, lieutenant generals, and generals. And now we have a situation whereby these generals, when they reach their retirement age, where every soldier below them leaves the service. They hang on to their positions and they stay longer. And then you find a lot of officers who could have retired as generals if there was a normal movement of, let's say, officers leaving the services at the age of 60. Now you find that very good officers who would have made great generals are retiring as colonels or lieutenant colonels. And this is, if I was still serving in the Malawi Defence Force, I would have been upset. And I'm sure a lot of my colleagues are also upset that this culture of returning people who should have gone and who have served the country well, and they have reached that age that they have to go and let the new crop take over. We find that these people are hanging to their positions. Of course, I understand that these positions, they come with a lot of benefits, but let those who are eligible to hold those positions hold those positions. Because what's happening is, because these senior officers are staying longer than they are supposed to stay, you find that when the new crop have the opportunity to assume these positions, instead of, let's say, having become brigadiers or major generals or even generals at the age of 55, but because the older group stayed on for another 4 years, they find themselves that they become generals at the age of 59 or even 60 when they're about to go to leave the service. So what happens is they retire but then get contracts that allow them to stay longer. But this only happens at the top. If you're a lieutenant colonel or below that, if you're 60, you're 60, you go. But because these generals have got influence and they've got the political support that they need, they're allowed to extend their contracts and hang on. So I don't think reappointing General Nundwe as Army Commander is the best way of solving the problem. If, let's say, the president was not pleased with the performance of the General Namatanga, there is a good crop of officers who can competently come in and fill in the shoes and do a great job. Because Malawi Defence Force is not about personalities. There is a culture of professionalism in the force, and which allows whoever comes in to do the right thing and do a great job. So I don't see any reason. Let's say if General Nundwe was removed at the age of 58 before his retirement, obviously the new president would have had that prerogative to say, okay, I think General Nundwe, you are unceremoniously removed from your position. I think you are allowed to come back. I would not have any problem with that. What I have a problem with is the fact that people who have served the country well are being allowed to come back, taking jobs that people who already in the system who are eligible to do those jobs are being deprived of that opportunity to become generals. In this case, Malawi Defence Force, and this is also happening in other ministries. We've seen a lot of retired PSs being reinstated. Of course, if they had been reinstated before their actual retirement or forced to move before their actual retirement, then yes, that's okay. to say, okay, General Nundwe, you can come back and become army commander. But for him, someone who is already retired, I think this is a very unfortunate development. And I hope that people who are advising the president should be honest with him, and you should be able to understand that these kind of decisions uh, they bring a bit of frustration, because there are a lot of brigadiers who are capable, who could have been promoted, but now they're seeing that, oh, okay, he's coming back, uh, and then they're at the age of 57, 58, and let's say General Nundwe stays on for another 3 years. By the time that they would have had that opportunity to get a promotion, they are already moving on into retirement. So I just hope that the president is getting the right advice, because I don't want this president to make the same mistakes that were made in the past. There are a lot of issues. The unfortunate or fortunate part of it is the discipline in the Malawi Defence Force. Officers just cry in darkness, and no one sees them, and they cry in silence, and no one sees them crying. For years, officers or soldiers, they've been deployed in peacekeeping missions. Our officers have done a great job with UN missions in Democratic Republic of Congo and Ivory Coast, and they've been on peacekeeping missions as military observers in Sudan, Western Sahara, and other countries, and they've done a great job. What has been really upsetting to our soldiers, and I keep hearing these stories, is the fact that when these soldiers or officers get deployed, they are putting their lives at risk. I've had friends killed, very good friends, officers I trained with, people I talked to, soldiers that were on my platoon when I was an officer in the Malawi Defence Force, getting killed in peacekeeping missions. So the Malawi Defence Force, or the Malawi government, is paid money. Is paid money for the deployment and the equipment they use, and the money is separate to the money that is allocated to each and every individual soldier sent into these peacekeeping missions. What has been happening in the past decade is that, apart from the money the government is already getting from the United Nations for the deployment of the troops, the Malawi Defence Force has been working with the government to deduct money, I'll call it blood money, deduct money from soldiers that is paid. Each and every soldier has got a monthly stipend. The money that every month they stay there, they are entitled to that amount of money, paid straight to them, not to the government, to the soldiers and officers. And then there's a separate amount paid to the government for the equipment sent and other services. That's separate money. So the government goes on to deduct money from soldiers, and when you are in that environment whereby you are actually exposing yourself to death, people die. My friends have died. Good soldiers, officers have died. They've been killed. But these soldiers, when they come back, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months after deployment. They've got expectations, and they expect that, okay, the UN was paying me, let's say, $1,500 a month for my services while I was in DRC. And then you come back, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to sort myself out with a house, at least buy a car. And this has actually improved people's lives. But this money is not free. These soldiers put their lives at risk, and they deserve that money. And then they come back to find out that, oh, of course, the UN paid you $1,500. We are going to be giving you $900 a month. How would these soldiers feel? These soldiers have lost their friends, and every day they put their lives at risk, and they were living in fear. And they've been told that you're not getting all your money. And no one has ever accounted for where this money goes. I believe that our current government has to come out clean and make sure that you give the soldiers what they deserve, what they're entitled to, what is paid to them, not to the government. The government already gets its money. So I think this is kind of talk that we need to, the president, the kind of advice the president has to be getting from his advisors, and try to rectify these problems. And it pains me every day hearing about these stories, because these soldiers are not going to come out openly and talk about these issues, but they're hurt, they're in pain. So I just hope that the current president addresses these concerns from our men and women in uniform. And I also felt I should address this issue. A few months ago, I saw some young men and women who had just passed on, just graduated from their training and became soldiers. Every time I see that, every time I see new officers getting commissioned, new soldiers passing out after their 6 months training, or new officers getting commissioned after 18 months, after their 18 months training, I see myself, and I can imagine myself in what they had just gone through. And when I look back what I went through for my 18 months training before I get commissioned as a lieutenant, I went through a lot, that there was never a single day that I never thought about leaving. And I'm sure that applies to every other soldier or officer. There is no single day that a soldier or officer goes through training without having a thought of leaving. This is how hard the training is. And I admired these young soldiers, and I found it a bit upsetting when I saw some people commenting on Facebook saying, oh yeah, oh, Ahmed aona niyambala yalowazibwana pano yangolemba ana. No, these are soldiers that have to be respected because they have earned their right to be in that uniform. We cannot be downplaying what they went through, because what they went through is something that no single person who has never worn that uniform would ever understand. I don't want to be going into details, but it's not easy. So we need to respect, irrespective of how young they look. Actually, during my officer training, there were a lot of people who looked tough at the beginning of the training, who looked muscular and big, and they found the training harder than the smallest looking person um, during our intake. So it's not about how physical you are. Military training is more about mental strength. The physical part of it develops and comes with it. So as long as you can endure any mental stress that you go through, the physical aspect becomes a bit harder. I mean, becomes a bit easier to deal with. So I hope the population will come to respect our men in uniform, irrespective of how they look, because what they go through to wear that uniform is something that no person who has never worn that uniform would ever understand. Just to go back to where I started, my issue about the reinstatement of General Nundwe has nothing to do with the president reappointing him as army commander. It's mostly to do with bringing in someone who had already retired when there are other capable officers who can actually do the job well, even better. So, as much as the president felt that the previous president didn't move General Nundwe properly, um, it's the president's prerogative to appoint whosoever he wishes uh, to have as his army commander or her army commander. The same way the current president has had that prerogative. I just hope that uh, the president gets the right advice and the people around him help him into making really good decisions that can be both popular amongst the military hierarchy as well as the population, because it's very, very complicated out there. There are a lot of deserving officers who deserve a chance to go up the ranks and become brigadiers, major generals, lieutenant generals, and generals. If you keep returning these retired generals, you are closing all the opportunities for all those officers below them who are also hoping to have that opportunity to occupy those offices. So I just hope um, um, the president makes the right decisions. And this is this is as I said from the beginning, General Nundwe as a person is a very decent human being, a great officer who treated us young officers, well, and I've got so much respect for him. So my issue is it's not personal with him, but the continued culture of returning officers, generals who have already returning retired officers or retired generals back into the service when those opportunities would open up for others. So, yes, I just thought today I should talk about the Malawi Defence Force and highlight on a few things that people have been asking me questions. So, yes, for now, I'll say good night and hope to see you soon.